I'd like to ask Maria Sarawiwa to come and introduce Paul Hoffman, please, if she's hiding there somewhere. Maria, are you still with us? Yes. Maria is the wife of Ken Sarawiwa, who you will all have heard of, and we're very, very honoured to have you with us. Would you like to come to the microphone?
It gives me much pleasure and pride to stand here and introduce Paul Hoffman, one of the attorneys involved in the prosecution of our case in New York. Before I do so, I would just like to say a few words about my husband. Ken Sarawiwa, my husband, was a kind and loving person. But he had one fault. He could not stand social injustice. I remember one day in Bori General Hospital during the Civil War in Nigeria, just before we escaped to Bonny. Going through the newspapers as we waited to be attended to infuriated him because of the lies the headline carried. The grammatical error in the reporting did not help matters. I was concerned because two soldiers were standing outside the room and Ken was complaining at the top of his voice. I was 17 years old. I felt safe and secure and protected by his side. In fact, he did the public speaking, not me. So when he was murdered, it was the second darkest day in my life in 3 years. The injustice and the pain was unbearable, but time is a great healer. But more important to the healing process has been the opportunity to seek justice for some of the Ogoni who suffered the traumas of Shell's inactivities. Many of our people are still suffering and haven't been compensated, but the settlement was an important victory for the psyche of the Ogoni people and gives hope that things may change. And for that, we thank all our supporters and especially the attorneys who stood tall against the financial and legal muscles of Shell and refused to flinch. I'm proud that one of the lawyers is here to share his experiences with us tonight. Paul Hoffman has been involved in human rights suits for many years. Without individuals like Paul, corporations and government will continue to destroy people and planet without fear of being held to account. I believe his efforts and his experiences have helped in small but significant ways to make the world a better place. So, let me stand aside and allow Paul Hoffman to tell his story. Paul.
Thank you very much, Maria. And I'd start by just saying what a privilege it was, what an honor it was to represent the Sarawiwa family and the other plaintiffs in the WeWa versus Shell case. It's actually been an incredible privilege to represent all of the plaintiffs in these cases. I've been given 18 minutes to talk about 3 cases, so I'm going to speak very fast, probably, and hopefully I won't get roped in too much. But I'm going to talk about the Doe versus Unocal case, the WeWa versus Shell case, and litigation against IBM, Ford, and Daimler for complicity in apartheid crimes. And I'll try in this brief introduction to give you an idea of some of the issues that we've confronted in bringing these cases. And hopefully in the question and answer period, we can talk some more about the details that you're interested in. I may also at some point, if I have the time, explain to you why I was cross-examining somebody in shirt sleeves in a court proceeding and try to convince you that this is not some weird Southern California thing that we do. I may not be able to convince you about that. The Doe versus Unocal case, as you saw from the clip, had to do with a natural gas pipeline project between the Andaman Sea on one side of Burma across the Tenarassam region of Burma. It was designed to bring natural gas to market in Thailand. And Unocal was warned. Unocal is a California-based oil company that now has been bought by Chevron. Was warned that there would be human rights violations in advance, and the reports told them that the profits that they should expect to get should be very high because of that. Unocal went ahead anyway. You saw the debate that we were having in the Court of Appeals about whether Unocal was, whether the SLORC was involved in the security for the project. Ultimately, the Court of Appeals decided that we had enough evidence to go forward. One important point about this in terms of why litigating is that we litigated this case because there wasn't really any alternative. Human rights activists, Burma activists had tried to go to Unocal privately. They tried to go to Unocal at shareholder meetings. They tried to name and shame Unocal in the traditional human rights fashion by publishing reports, and all of that was for naught. And so litigation was really the only option. The litigation was based on a statute that was passed in 1789 by the first U.S. Congress that gives non-citizens the right to bring claims for torts committed in violation of the law of nations. And it's a statute that basically was designed to express the United States' commitment to enforce the law of nations when it was then a weak nation, a communication to the world that it would do so. And the statute really was unused for nearly 200 years until a case called Filartiga versus Peña-Urrea in 1980, where an appellate court in New York found that the statute could be used to enforce international human rights norms. And in the beginning, we sued, I call it our dictator phase. We sued human rights violators that washed up on U.S. shores like Ferdinand Marcos, General Suarez Mason, one of the people responsible for the dirty war in Argentina. My personal favorite was a suit against a Chilean equestrian who was coming to the Pan Am Games where we had an attachment for his horse. But when he found out about it, he didn't come. And by the mid-1990s, when the people that were trying to fight the pipeline project and the human rights violations that were occurring in connection with it, the forced labor, the torture, the extrajudicial executions, we decided that there was no reason why we couldn't sue corporations for their complicity in these human rights violations, that what the corporations were engaged in were, at a minimum, aiding and abetting torts that were committed in violation of the law of nations.